Hi, my name is Mica Chavez, and I'm one of the chefs on staff here at the Santa Fe School of Cooking. Today we're going to be making corn tortillas. If you have eaten in Santa Fe or the Southwest in general, you've probably had a corn tortilla, or two, or 100. But we like to make ours from scratch, and it's so easy that we wanted to share this with you. So I'm going to start out with a small bowl of masa de harina. So this is a corn flour that's undergone the soaking process with corn, an alkali, and water. This masa de harina is multifunctional. We use this for corn tortillas, and we also use it for tamales. So you start out with your masa, and you have to add a generous pinch of salt. You can always put more water in, but you're not going to take it back out. So start slow and work your way up, and it doesn't really matter what temperature the water is. Now this is completely gluten-free, fat-free, vegan. This is the bread that most people can eat unless you're allergic to corn. So we're going to start out adding a little bit of water. So a few years ago I was really fortunate and I got to go to Oaxaca, Mexico, which is considered to be the birthplace of corn some 10,000 years ago. And everything in Oaxaca is based around corn. And I saw no wheat there when I was there. But they made these delicious empanadas out of really big, really thin, freshly ground corn tortillas, and they stuffed them with a local goat cheese and beets and some spinach. It was incredibly good. So if you have somebody in your family that can't do wheat, this could be a really nice substitute. All right, so I'm just going to continue to mix until this has mix and add water until it has a play dough type consistency. Okay, just a little bit more. And I'll show you how to tell when you have enough wet to enough dry. All right, so the first indicator is the ball of dough is cleaning the bowl. That won't do that if it's too wet. And as I'm kneading the ball of dough, it's not cracking, so that means it's not too dry. Okay, so the recipe says that you need to let this dough sit for about 30 minutes. I have found over working with this particular masa, so it's masa de harina when it's flour. It's masa when it's constituted. So I found that after working with masa for several years that you don't need to let it sit. There's no gluten in here, which means you don't have to let it rest. So when I make corn tortillas and I make them in bulk, I'll use an ice cream scoop. So you just scoop out the masa, ball it up, and that way all your tortillas are the same size. And they're not like handmade. Okay, or they don't look so handmade. All right, so this contraption is a tortilla press. Now my maternal grandmother used to make perfectly round corn tortillas by hand. She would do this kind of thing like this. And not too long ago, we had this woman from India here at the Santa Fe School of Cooking, and she was making the tortillas, and she was kind of doing the same thing. And I looked at her and I said, "You make a lot of chapati, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah." Every ancient culture had some kind of a flatbread, something that could be made quickly with a minimum of ingredients and maybe cooked over a hot rock. But the corn tortilla is our flatbread. Corn is to us in the New World as rice is to Asia, as wheat is to Europe. So imagine Italy without bread and pasta. Imagine France without baguettes. Imagine Japan without rice. The cultures would just collapse. And that's very much the same thing for us with corn. Almost every New World nation has corn somewhere in their creation story. So this is our flatbread. So you're going to take about a golf ball sized ball of dough, depending on how big you want your tortillas. So what I've done here is I took a freezer bag and I cut what resembles a circle out of it. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be bigger than the press. Okay, put your ball of dough in the middle, put your plastic on top. Don't let it slide. You're going to drop the top and then press. So in some parts of Mexico, they'll make a dish called Gorditas. One of the nice things about Spanish and most Latin languages is there is no hypocrisy. If you're fat, you're fat. If you're thin, you're thin. If you're bald, you're bald. And it's just kind of understood. So gorditas mean little fat girls. And they'll take these corn tortillas with they'll be a little bit thicker, and you make them with the press, but you add baking powder or baking soda to it, and then you fry them, not cook them like this, and they puff up, and then you stuff that with ground meat and beans or chili. In El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, they make a dish called arepas, which is like a stuffed corn tortilla, and they also use a press. So these presses are multifunctional. I also use mine to split olives. So if you have olives with pits, put a bag here and just smack the top. I don't want to do it because it'll be loud. And then just kind of bang on the handle a couple of times, and those will split your olives so you can pit them easily. All right, I'll make another couple more. So when you're cooking these, I've got a heated cast iron skillet here, and I used no oil. So these are really about as fat-free as you're going to get. So you want to cook them in a heated cast iron pan. And what's going to happen here is, as this tortilla cooks, one edge is going to start to roll up wherever your thin edge is. And it's pretty subtle, but when that edge starts to roll up, you're going to want to flip it. And you want to use a really hot pan because you want to get those dots. I call it tortilla braille. You want to get those little dots. Now, if you want a thicker tortilla, don't push your handle down this far. Corn tortillas, because they have no fat, need to be kept steamy. So I have a basket staged right here. And so when I take these tortillas out of the pan, I'm going to put them right in the basket. I'm going to flop the napkin over it so they stay nice and warm. And these will actually be better in about 10 or 15 minutes after they steam. This is a really fun activity to do with kids. All right, so this is starting to curl up on one side. I've got my dots on there. So now I'm going to turn it. And when I was a kid, my grandma would make fresh corn tortillas, and we would just sit there with a stick of butter and some salt and just eat them right out of the pan. Okay. So when the edge and the middle feel the same, it's done. Okay, and let that steam. Okay. I've tried using plastic wrap on these presses. It doesn't work. I've tried using parchment paper. It doesn't work. There's something about the thickness of the freezer bags that works. Okay, that one's starting to curl up. Okay. So these are fairly simple and straightforward. Here's why I like making my own tortillas to make enchiladas. So when you use the commercially prepared tortillas, you have to fry them first to soften them up. And that adds a lot of calories and a lot of fat. When you use fresh corn tortillas, you don't have to fry them. So the way that we make enchiladas in northern New Mexico is to lay them flat, norteño style. We don't roll them. So these fresh corn tortillas fit that need really, really well. Lot less calories, lot less fat. So I can tell that this masa is starting to get dry just sitting out here. It's very dry in Santa Fe today. So here's what I'm looking for. If I squeeze this and it sticks all over my hand, it's too wet. That's not a mess. If I squeeze it and it cracks, it's too dry. It's starting to crack right there, so that's telling me that it's starting to get dried out. If that happens and you're making tortillas, just wet your hands a little bit and then start playing with your masa. You cannot overwork the dough. No gluten. So this is really about as error-proof a dough as you're gonna get. Again, 10,000 years. This is our flatbread. People have been making this a long, long time. Okay, tortilla braille. Okay, that's curling up. They smell so good. Fresh corn tortillas are like manna from heaven. I don't think there's really, if you like the flavor of Southwestern food, this is it. You really can't go too far without running into a corn tortilla. Now, flour tortillas came over with the Spaniards. We didn't see wheat in this part of the world until probably the 15 or 1600s. And you really only find wheat up in northern Mexico, up in the Mexican states of Sonora and Chihuahua, just because it takes a lot of water and a lot of land to grow wheat. And in some parts of Mexico, it's just not sustainable. So further south, you see a lot of corn, more corn than wheat, and then ultimately it's all corn, and then they'll start using things like yuca or plantain. Oh yeah. All right, that feels good. So this is corn tortillas. I recommend these with butter and salt right off the stove. Let them sit and get steamy for a few minutes. You can make some enchiladas with this. But you really want to use these as close to the time after they've steamed that you can. They really won't hold well overnight. So in the case of corn tortillas, fresh is best. I'm Chef Mica. You can find all of these tools on our website, santafeschoolofcooking.com. Please stay tuned. We're working hard to bring you live classes and pre-recorded classes. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can find us at the Santa Fe School of Cooking. We would love to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you next time around. Thank you.